Now let's implement this together. And for this, I will start in the urls.py file in the challenges app folder and add a new path. And here I simply want to have an empty path. So I won't enter anything here between the quotes, because you must not forget that this URL patterns list is reached for requests sent to challenges. So for domain/challenges. For those requests, we load the URLs in the challenges folder. So if we then there have a URL with an empty path, that will simply trigger for just /challenges/nothing. Because this is an empty string. So for nothing after /challenges, this path will be triggered. And then of course we also want to create a view for this, because at the moment I don't have a function for this, and that's something I'll add here, maybe at the top. Here I want to add a new view function, which I'll name index, because it has the goal of listing an index of all available months. The name is up to you. This is just a name which you will see quite often and which I guess makes a lot of sense. So I will go with that name. That's my index function here. And in there, of course, we want to return a HTTP response. HTTP response like this. And in there, as part of that response, as data, I want to return a list of months, and every list item should be a clickable link where we are taken to that month then. And there are various ways of doing that. We could, for example, hard code everything. We could add our response data here, and then create a string here, maybe actually a multi-line string to make this a bit easier to write here. And we can use triple quotes to create such a multi-line string. And then in there, we could create an unordered list like that. So that's some HTML content. And then have list items where for the first list item, we have an anchor tag with some reference, so with a link, which we'll have to add. And there we say January, and we want to link to challenges/January. And now we can repeat this for every month. But this approach has two main flaws. For one, I'm hard coding that path again, and that's not something we want to do. We instead want to use the reverse function we learned about to select the target URL by name and let Python, or Django to be precise, construct the full path. The second flaw about this approach is that we manually have to add all the code for all the months. And actually we already have a list of months here. These dictionary keys, that's a list of months. So a better approach might be to kind of generate this string here by just having unordered list tags, which then wrap the list item tags, which we generate dynamically by going through all the dictionary entries here and then adding them to the string step by step, so that at the end we have an unordered list with all the list items for all the months, but it's generated automatically by code instead of hard-coded by us. And that's the approach I will follow here, though you can also go with the hard-coded approach if you prefer that. Now, how can we implement this? Well, I will start by adding a new variable in my index function here, which I'll name list items. And this will be an empty string initially. Then I will get my months, which should be a list, generated as we did it down there. So we can copy that code. We could also refactor it into a standalone function, but I will just quickly copy it. So now again, we'll have a list of all those month keys here. As a next step, we can then add a for loop here and simply go through all the month items in the months list to loop through all the keys we got in this months list. And then simply set list items plus equal to a f string where we have the list item tag and then the anchor tag with ref and also the closing anchor tag. And here we simply refer to month, maybe month.capitalize, to capitalize the first letter. Alternatively, we add a new helper variable, capitalized month, where we call month.capitalize like this. And then here we inject just the capitalized month. And I also want to generate the path here. So the month path, which we create with the reverse function we learned about earlier. And here we want to basically construct it as we did down there. We want to take the URL with the name month challenge. So this name here. And we want to set the args. So this dynamic segment in the generated URL, which should be replaced with a concrete value, we'll set this concrete value here equal to month. Not to the capitalized month, but instead to the month as we have it here. So all lowercase. And then we inject this month path here as a value for this link. Now, one problem we'll have here is related to the quotes, of course, because I started my string with double quotes. So here we should escape these inner double quotes here. So now what we do is we loop through all the months, so all these keys here, and then we generate a new string for every month. This string, which holds a hard-coded list item tag and an anchor tag, but which has a dynamic path to which this link leads then, and which has a dynamic text inside of the link. And we add these link strings here to the list items string, which initially is an empty string, so that after every iteration, list items will hold more and more list item strings, so more strings of this kind. And therefore, after this for loop, this will basically be a long string of side-by-side list items. So here we'll then simply have all those list items side by side in the list item string after this for loop. And in every list item, we have an anchor tag with some link, and we have January here. And then in the next list item, we have February, and so on. That's the shape this list items variable will have after this for loop. And now it's this list items variable, which holds this long text of all the list items, which we want to inject into our response data string, which simply has the job of wrapping all these list items with an unordered list. And for that, of course, we can go back to a simple formatted string here, have our unordered list, and there I simply inject the list items string with all those list items. And then it's the response data which we sent back here. And that was a lot of work, but with that, we're dynamically generating some HTML code here. Now, if I save that, I'm already getting an error down there that path is missing one required positional argument. And that makes sense because in that URL which I added earlier, I now want to point at that newly added views function. So I'll point at views.index, at this function we just added. And with all of that, if you save all the files, if you reload just localhost 8000/challenges, you should have a list of all these months. And you can click on these months to be taken to the challenges for the individual months. And that's this finished first basic website. It's not beautiful at all, definitely not. It does not have any styling, and it does not have a complete HTML document body. This is just some basic HTML, unstyled, but it has the core features, the core functionality you need to know if you're working with Python. And that's what this module was all about. So let me sum up what we learned in this module in the next lecture. And then in the next section, we're going to work on what we sent back. We're going to make this more beautiful and more realistic with a feature called templates.